Welcome to Popejoy Hall's first estate planning webinar. I'm Maryellen Missik-Tow, and I'm the Development Director at Popejoy Hall, the flagship performing arts center of New Mexico, and your host this morning. We have three talented speakers who will address the fundamentals of estate planning, charitable giving, and provide thoughtful guidance for achieving your philanthropic goals. Our panelists include Lisa Wynn, attorney, Morris Hall Law Firm, Claire Ironside, Popejoy Hall board member, nurse practitioner at the VA hospital, Bonnie McCleskey, associate vice president of planned giving at the UNM Foundation, and my co-host and technical director, proud UNM student, Noah Lucero. Noah is majoring in biochemistry and he's pre-med, currently studying for his MCATs. I have to promote UNM. After all, we are on a university campus. Typically, Popejoy Hall entertains, inspires, and educates 250,000 people each year. We are very hopeful for a fall season with a stellar lineup of top Broadway productions for your enjoyment. Since March is Women's History Month, I'd like to share a story about a woman who is called a force of nature in the world of fundraising, and her story shouldn't be forgotten. Naomi Levine passed away in January of 2021 at the age of 97. She was born in the Bronx and was a proud graduate in 1944 from Columbia Law School. Naomi was an accomplished civil rights attorney and the first woman to hold a position as national director of the American Jewish Congress. At the age of 55, Naomi reached the pinnacle of her career and she decided, I need a new profession. Her resume landed on the desk of NYU President George Sawhill. Sawhill saw something in Naomi. The year was 1978 and NYU was about to become bankrupt. Sawhill hired Naomi and it was the smartest decision he ever made. During her 20-year career at NYU, Naomi Levine raised over $2.5 billion and she helped transform NYU into a top-tier institution. Levine stated that philanthropy and nonprofit organizations play a critical role in our society. And she explained it something like this. She said, close your eyes for a minute and think of the beautiful skyline of New York City. Now open your eyes and think of that same skyline with no Lincoln Center, no NYU, no Fordham University, no Guggenheim, no Met, no St. Vincent's Hospital downtown or Lenox Hill Hospital uptown. All these organizations require financial support. Without philanthropy, none of these institutions would exist today. Today, we are the only country in the world that supports all of our institutions by philanthropy. Thank you for choosing Popejoy Hall for your philanthropy. Now, for your enjoyment, we have a film. It's about the history of Popejoy Hall and about Popejoy Hall Excellence Fund, the first endowment created for programming, operations, and outreach. And it was created by an anonymous donor. Enjoy.
When Tom Popejoy built the hall that bears his name, he insisted on quality from the start. He hired the best architects and theater consultants in the country and delivered a venue that stands with the best in the nation. He felt that the hall would serve as a handshake with New Mexicans, and it has. More than 50 years later, Popejoy Hall continues to shine with every performance. We inspire, educate, and entertain over 250,000 patrons each year. We've brought hundreds of shows to New Mexico since we opened in 1966, shows that only come to our state because we can accommodate them. As good a venue as it is, it takes constant work to maintain the hall, to bring exceptional artists to the stage, and to work beyond its walls to connect New Mexicans with the artists we present. Since our major $10 million renovation in 1996, we have spent more than $4 million on maintaining and upgrading the facility, including seating, acoustic curtains, public restrooms, sound and lighting equipment, and more. We spend between $4 and $5 million each year just on artist fees, and even more than that in a season that includes a show with an extended run. We work with scores of schools and organizations to bring them to Popejoy Hall for educational programming. We work with others to take classes and other outreach opportunities to them. That's why we created the Popejoy Hall Excellence Fund. The fund was begun just a few years ago with an extraordinary gift of $100,000 from an anonymous donor. Since then, we've been hard at work growing this endowment. To provide a truly sustaining endowment, though, we need to increase this fund to $1 million. We want to ensure that Tom Popejoy's vision endures, that we can always bring quality arts and entertainment here, that we can maintain the facility to allow and encourage artists to bring their best shows to New Mexico, and that we can continue to professionally manage the hall for generations to come. There are so many things we could do given a thriving Excellence Fund. A pillar on our loading dock prevents shows like the redesigned Phantom of the Opera from coming here. The Excellence Fund could pay for the removing of that pillar, opening the way for more shows to come here. When the biggest Broadway shows, like Hamilton or Wicked or Come From Away, come to Popejoy, we'd love to buy tickets for deserving students. Our education and outreach program could serve even more students every year with more classes led by our performing artists, or bringing more students to our School Time series performances. That list barely scratches the surface of all the opportunities we could pursue. Popejoy Hall is UNM founded but community funded. Therefore, it is critical to our ongoing growth and viability to have community and business support with attendance and contributions. As Popejoy Hall continues to grow, as we have greater impact on more New Mexicans, we know we are continuing the legacy of the man who built our hall more than 50 years ago, Tom Popejoy. He was a visionary leader who served as president of the University of New Mexico from 1948 to 1968. He understood that the impact of an extraordinary performing arts experience can last a lifetime. He knew that live performances need proper venues, well designed and well managed, to make those experiences possible. He gave us an exemplary hall to host those performances for all New Mexicans. It's up to us to maintain that extraordinary gift for generations to come through proper stewardship and the thoughtful contributions of our community. Thank you for all you do for Popejoy Hall.
I hope you enjoyed the film. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker this morning, Lisa Wynn, attorney at Morris Hall Law Firm. Lisa worked as a paralegal, worked her way through law school as a paralegal for Arizona State University. She's been with Morris Hall for 7 years, and Morris Hall is a law firm that specializes in estate administration. They have locations in Santa Fe, Albuquerque, and Las Cruces, New Mexico. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to present Lisa Wynn.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Okay. We are also a charter member of the American Academy of Estate Planning Attorneys, and Morris Hall has been in practice for 50 years. Okay. A little bit about me. I went to school in Arizona, been with the firm since 2014. I'm also licensed to practice in both Arizona and New Mexico, but those are the boring details. I'm recently married. I also have 5 rescue dogs. I have a very blended family that includes my stepmom, my siblings from both of my parents, and my special needs baby brother on my dad's side. Some of the reasons that I tell you this is not only so that you can get to know me personally, but also to stress the importance that an estate plan is not a one-size-fits-all plan. Estate planning is not just about your stuff, it's about protecting what is important to you. And that's why I share with you what's important to me. This morning, we're going to cover what an estate plan is, what your options are for estate planning, discuss the differences between a will and a trust, other important documents that you should have in your plan, including healthcare and financial documents, and how to pick agents to serve in these various roles. So before we can talk about what an estate plan is, we need to define what is included in your estate. So a lot of people associate an estate with real property. And while your estate can include your home and other real property, that's just part of what your estate is. Your estate is made up of your cash and other bank accounts, your property, retirement assets, life insurance, and personal property. In short, an estate is everything that you own, and so everything needs to be planned for. So what are your estate planning options? Well, your first option is that you can spend it all. And unless we know exactly when we're going to pass away, not many of us have that crystal ball that tells us when we're going to pass. So spending it all probably isn't a good estate planning option because we can pass away before we spend down all of our estate, and that doesn't leave us with much option because something still needs to happen with what's left after we pass away. Or we can spend it all before we die, and then that also leaves us in a predicament as well. So spending it all is not exactly the most ideal estate planning option. Another estate planning option is what's called joint tenancy. And joint tenancy is when two or more people own an asset. This is very common with spouses when both are listed on a bank account or the deed to your home. One problem with joint tenancy is that it only prevents probate on the passing of the first owner. So it doesn't account for what would happen if both owners passed away or what happens at the second passing. Additionally, with property that's held as joint tenancy, you need to be really careful of titling. This is really important with real estate to make sure that the appropriate right of survivorship language is included. Additionally, you can die intestate, which means that you pass away without a plan. In this case, when an individual passes away without a plan, either a will or a trust, the state determines who will be in charge and who will receive your stuff. Additionally, we'll also talk about the differences between a will and a trust, and these are our two most common estate plans. So, a will is a legal document that expresses a person's wishes as to how their property is to be distributed after their death. Simply put, a will is instructions to a probate judge to nominate who is in charge and who gets your belongings. Additionally, for parents with minor children, this is where you also nominate guardians. Many people are under the misconception that if you have a will, you will avoid probate, and a will alone is not enough to avoid probate. While a will is better than doing nothing because at least you can choose who's in charge and where you would like your belongings to pass after you're gone, a will depends on your specific individual criteria. Some people are okay with probate, some people are not. So that's why I stress the importance that an estate plan needs to be carefully created for your individual needs. A trust is an agreement that spells out the rules you want followed for the property that's held in your trust for the beneficiaries. And on the surface, a will and a trust sound very familiar. However, a trust is a private document that controls what happens with your estate after you're gone. So, unlike a will that gets administered by a probate judge, you can think of a trust similar to a bucket. You want your trust to own all of your assets and everything would be put into that bucket. So after your passing, it would pass to your successor trustees to administer your estate in accordance with the specific rules that you've outlined in your trust document for your beneficiaries. The main difference between a will and a trust is whether or not you want your estate going through court after your passing. In addition to creating the document that will control your estate after you're gone, or if you should become incapacitated, there's many other considerations that you should consider when crafting your estate plan. As I mentioned in the beginning, estate planning is protecting what and who you love. It's not just about distributing your stuff when you're gone. So, do you have any other concerns? For example, are you concerned about nursing home care costs? If you're married, do you have concerns about your spouse getting remarried after your passing? What about if they get remarried and then subsequently divorced from their second spouse? Do you have loved ones you want to protect? What if your estate plan could be crafted in a way that would protect your children or your loved ones in the event something bad happened to them? For example, if they were to get divorced, had a lawsuit against them, filed bankruptcy. Are you also concerned about minimizing or mitigating estate tax issues? With a proper estate plan, we can give you the peace of mind that your estate plan will not only go to who you want, when you want, but we can plan for you so that way you can have a uniquely crafted estate plan to protect all the things that you love, that are important to you, and that you care about. Additional documents that you should have with your estate plan outside of just a will or a trust would include financial and healthcare powers of attorney. So, what is a power of attorney? A power of attorney is a legal instrument that allows a person to grant decision-making authority to another person or an entity. I often get calls from family members and loved ones stating that they need to get power of attorney over their mom, their dad, their sibling, or another relative or a loved one because they can no longer handle their affairs. However, at this point, it's usually a little bit too late. A power of attorney is a power that is given by the power holder. This is also known as the principal, to an agent to act on their behalf. This is a right that is given, not gotten. Therefore, when somebody needs to get power of attorney over another person who no longer has capacity to make decisions for themselves, we're looking at a much more complicated process, also known as a conservator or guardianship, which is a court process that can be a lot more time consuming and complicated. So I always highly encourage people to plan in advance. That way, their estate, their financial, and their healthcare matters are taken care of in the event that they become incapacitated. That way, everything's planned for in advance without the necessity of court involvement. Powers of attorney can include decision-making authority for healthcare and financial decisions. One important thing to keep in mind when thinking of your estate plan and powers of attorney and when you should have these documents drafted is that spouses are not automatically appointed to make decisions for an incapacitated spouse. While this may be a presumption, it's always better to have everything spelled out in writing. Not all powers of attorney are created equal, so it's very important that you discuss your specific needs with the drafting attorney when putting together your estate plan. A power of attorney can be made immediately. It can be made for only when you're incapacitated. A power of attorney can also be specific to certain transactions, or it can be broad and general. Additionally, a power of attorney is no longer effective upon death. So, in addition to having your financial and your healthcare documents, you also need to make sure your estate plan includes your will or your trust to direct what happens after you are no longer with us. So, what are some of the considerations when selecting your agents? Well, let's define what your agent's roles are. A trustee is a manager or a person you nominate to be in charge of your trust estate. So, this can either be as between spouses when they create the trust, they are usually the trustees together as co trustees, or for single individuals, you would be the sole trustee. And after you are incapacitated or are no longer with us, your successor trustees step into this role to manage the trust affairs. A personal representative, sometimes called an executor, is the person who is nominated in your will to handle your affairs after you are gone. And a healthcare and financial agent are the people that you nominate in your healthcare and financial power of attorney to make decisions for you if you are incapacitated as they relate to your healthcare and your finances. So, what are some of the considerations that you should think of when nominating these agents? Well, age is a very important consideration. Are you nominating people who are of similar age to you? When we're thinking about your estate plan, we want to make sure that your estate plan lives with you for long periods of time. So if you're young and healthy now and you're nominating your friends or maybe siblings who are of the same age as you, and as you get older, they're also going to get older. And what happens if they're incapacitated or they've predeceased you? The same is true when we're thinking of age in the reverse. Are we nominating agents who are either financially or emotionally ready to make these decisions? Are they too young? What about experience? Do we have those who are close to us who have served in these similar roles or have experience that would make them a better fit? A lot of the times when parents come to me and ask me who they should nominate, by default, a lot of the times what they'll do is nominate their children in age order because they don't want to make one of them feel like they picked one over the other. But what I like to counsel my clients on is there a child who maybe has more financial experience and would be better suited as your financial power of attorney? What about medical power of attorney? Is there a agent who has more experience in the healthcare field? What about their location to you? It's very important, especially for healthcare decision making, is that we have a local agent who can make these healthcare decisions for you in a timely manner. Usually, when somebody needs to act on your behalf to make healthcare decisions, those are more time sensitive than potentially a financial decision. So, location is also a consideration when thinking about what agent to nominate in these respective roles. Additionally, what is their relationship to you? Are you close and discuss your finances and they're fully aware of where your accounts are at and where they're located and they can seamlessly step into your shoes to take over your affairs? What if you have different views on end of life decisions, and would the agent that you're making or nominating as your agent for these healthcare decisions honor your wishes, and would they be okay with executing them? Additionally, you can consider agents who are not only just personal relatives, friends, family, children, relatives. You can also consider professionals to serve in this capacity as well: CPAs, attorneys, and professional trust companies. Again, estate planning is not a one size fits all bucket. So each individual has certain goals and objectives has different family dynamics, and all of this needs to be considered when thinking about who to nominate and who should be in charge of your affairs for both healthcare and financial. Estate planning is about providing peace of mind. A complete estate plan should include your will or your trust. When planning with a will, we also encourage to include a pour over will. This is a safety net to make sure that if there is any assets outside of your trust, that they can be poured back into your trust, so that way all of your assets are taken care of with the rules that you've set out in your trust document. Should include a property power of attorney. This is your financial power of attorney. Your living will, which are your end of life decisions in the event that you are in a terminal permanent vegetative state. Healthcare power of attorney, and your HIPAA disclosure. This is really important, so that way if you cannot communicate, the doctors have permission to talk to your agents, your family members, and other individuals regarding your health. Assignment of personal property and assignment of your assets. It's very important to make sure your plan does exactly what you want. Again, estate planning is not a one size fits all. It needs to be uniquely crafted for your individual requirements, needs, care. Make sure that your loved ones are protected and that we identify what is important to you, and that's reflected in your estate plan. Contingency day checklist. These are some tips and tools that you can use to make things easier for your loved ones and your agents when you're gone. Cleaning out your files and your drawers. This is very important. We get a lot of times often with clients when their loved ones come in to see us after somebody has passed away, or if they're incapacitated. And I can't tell you how many times, children come in and say, Mom and Dad kept everything and I don't know what's current. I don't know what still exists. So it's very important to keep accurate records. And if you no longer own something, make sure that it's properly addressed in your files. We don't need to keep everything from the past 30, 40 years. And I can tell you that from personal experience with my grandfather. He kept everything from the day he started working, life insurance policies that had lapsed, retirement accounts he no longer had. So it was very tedious trying to figure out what Grandpa did have at the time he passed. I highly recommend seeing an attorney about your estate plan. The reason why Morris Hall focuses solely on estate planning is so that we can provide the best advice to you. As an attorney, I can practice in family law, I can practice in criminal, I can practice in any sort of law that I want. But the reason I focus my practice on estate planning is so that I can not only keep up to date with the most recent estate planning changes, is also so that I can carve out and craft uniquely tailored plans for my clients. If I dabbled in family law or criminal, I wouldn't know all the ins and outs of estate planning. So I highly encourage seeing an estate planning attorney so that they can craft an estate plan that is unique to you and protects the things that you love. If applicable, I also recommend talking to your loved ones about your estate plan. I can't tell you how many times kids come in and they're confused about not only what their parents may or may not have had, but what their wishes are. Did they have any goals or admirations? A lot of the times what causes issues after a loved one is gone is that there's miscommunication about your estate plan. So for example, if you don't have the conversation and your oldest child assumes that they will be in charge because they're the oldest, but you've really designated another child because they're more suited for that position, that may cause some tension after you're gone, and we can't ask you what you really meant after you're gone. So I highly encourage talking to those individuals you've nominated in your plan. Also encourage making a list of your personal property and items of where you want them to go. This is really important because if you have items that have sentimental value to one individual or over another, we don't want there to be fights And this is where we see a lot of times where estates get litigated is because people are fighting over personal items that have sentimental value. I also encourage writing a letter to your loved ones. This serves as a memento after you're gone, but then also kind of helps identify what your intent is. You know, we can carve your estate plan in a way that covers all of the legal basis, but we also encourage writing a letter. This incorporates a personal touch to your estate plan, provides guidance to your loved ones after you're gone. These are just some examples of how you can discuss your estate plan, not only with your loved ones, some considerations you think about when thinking about your will and your trust, and also how to make things easier. Thank you everyone for allowing me to talk to you this morning about estate planning and the basics of an estate plan.
Thank you, Lisa Wynn and the Morris Hall Law Firm. Our second speaker this morning is Claire Ironside. Claire serves on the Popejoy Hall Board of Directors. She is a rock star and frontline worker. Claire is a nurse practitioner at the VA hospital, caring for our most vulnerable veterans, working in palliative and hospice care. It is my pleasure to introduce Claire Ironside.
Thank you for that lovely introduction, Maryellen. And as Maryellen noted, my name is Claire Ironside. I am a Popejoy board member, a palliative and hospice nurse practitioner, and I included Popejoy in my estate. The decision to include Popejoy in my estate took careful consideration, time, and was born out of my professional and personal experiences. As a palliative and hospice nurse practitioner, I take care of people with serious and terminal illnesses. I have the distinct privilege of helping my patients navigate their final wishes as I bear witness to their stories of a life they once lived. And in many cases, they are trusting me with part of their legacy. When I started to lay out my affairs, I wanted to think about my legacy and what was important to me. Of course, my family was at the top of the list, but I also wanted to consider something bigger than me or my family, the things in my life that I was passionate about. Several things came to mind, and first it was my profession, hospice and palliative care, which I absolutely love and think is a great area to work in. And the next answer for me was Popejoy. I kept coming back to the arts and all the memories of Popejoy, from the first date with my husband to dressing up for a night out. Popejoy allows me to take time out of my busy life and revel in the amazingly talented performers that come across the stage, which I really appreciate because I have zero artistic talents. And although my estate is not going to fund Popejoy for the next 100 years, I hope that a part of my legacy will play a small role in keeping this New Mexico establishment going beyond my time.
Thank you, Claire Ironside. Our third speaker today is Bonnie McCleskey. Bonnie is genuine, skilled, and knowledgeable in all areas of estate planning, and I'm proud to call her my colleague at the UNM Foundation, where she serves as the Associate Vice President of Plan Giving. It is my pleasure to introduce Bonnie McCleskey.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that nice introduction. I'm just going to pull up my PowerPoint here really quickly to share with you. So hang on just one moment. All right. Well, I want to just say thank you for allowing me to be here today. It's a real treat to support Popejoy and to work with Maryellen. The UNM Foundation raises all private funds for any aspect of UNM, which includes Popejoy Hall. So Maryellen and I work together quite a bit on estate gifts to Popejoy, and it's just a joy for me because I love the theater so much. So I'm going to talk today about charitable gifts in your estate plan. So this is when you're starting to think about, other than heirs, where you might want to leave a legacy. So I want to first just share this quote. This is a Greek proverb, and it's a little out of date. So I'll just say, a society grows old when people plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. And that is very true, because we see so many people doing this and thinking forward and saying, you know, I really want to support something bigger than myself that's going to benefit future generations. So we're thinking, who are the people that who are including charities in their estate plan? Well, just to give you a little background, in 2019, Americans gave $449 billion to U.S. charities. And 10% of these gifts were funds from realized bequests. And only 8% of Americans, interestingly enough, include charity or charities in their estate plan. Now, we often think, okay, people with no children are probably going to give to charity because, you know, they may give a little to friends, but they want to put their money somewhere where it's going to go to good use. And because they don't have any children, there's no natural heirs to give it to. And I read just yesterday that the people who make the most bequests are widows. So you know, they've lived longer, and they're the ones that have ended up with the assets, and they're going to make the decisions about where this money is going to go. But we also are seeing increased planned gifts from people with children. I'm going to share this little quote from Warren Buffett here. The perfect amount to leave to your kids is enough money so that they would feel they could do anything, but not so much that they could do nothing. So what I see a lot of people with children do, say they have 2 children, what they do is they divide their estate into thirds. So they've got something for both of the children, and then they've got the third is charities in their life that they loved and were very impactful for them. So they divide their estate like that. That's quite common. So why include charities in your plan? Now, I'm going to use a couple examples here from Popejoy Hall, including Claire, who just spoke with us. So they want to ensure the nonprofit's going to continue to benefit future generations. So Claire has gone ahead and she's included Popejoy Hall's Excellence Fund as the recipient of half of her estate in her trust. That is just a tremendous gift, and we thank you, Claire. Tip my hat to you. The next thing is to replace an annual donation. So a lot of people say, well, gosh, I've been giving, you know, whatever it is, 50, 100, 500 a year to this charity. I want to give something to even after I'm gone, to make sure that that gift is around for another 20, 30 years. So a man named Terry that we worked with, he made Popejoy Hall a beneficiary of his retirement plan, just for unrestricted support for Popejoy. And then finally, honoring someone who's made a profound impact in their lives. And I know that Maryellen and I worked with Tom and Mary to create an endowment for Popejoy Hall that was in the name of a family member who loved theater. And this was just such a meaningful gift when you can not only leave a legacy, your own legacy, but you can honor somebody who has helped you through your life and just made a big impact on you, and kind of name something for them so that you've got kind of 2 legacies going on there. So how? So there's 3, well, I'm going to talk about 3 different ways, but 2 of them. So the most common is to include a bequest in a will or trust, which is what Claire did. And then we're going to talk about beneficiary designations, which include retirement policies, transfer on death accounts, life insurance plans, things like that live outside of a will or trust. And then I'm going to briefly go over the IRA charitable rollover, which, you know, it's a retirement asset, but once you reach a certain age, you can give that while you're living. You can give money from your IRA. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is a bequest in a will or trust. So there's kind of three types of bequest. You could give a specific sum of money. I'd like to give $25,000. You could say a percentage of your residual estate after other things have been paid out. Or you could give a specific asset like a house, securities, a coin collection, you know, things like that, artwork. We see a lot of that. So, and this is the top way that people include a charity in their estate plan. I would say about 85% of all plan gifts that we get from at the UNM Foundation are bequests. Those are still the most common. So the next step, if you were interested in putting a bequest in your will or trust, would be to talk to an estate planning attorney like Lisa. Now, beneficiary designations, these are interesting. So I'm just going to list out these couple here. Now, retirement accounts, they are a really wonderful asset to give to charity. And that is because the charity will receive 100% of what is in that retirement account. If you designate, make the beneficiary of your retirement account anybody other than your spouse, they have to take all that money out within 10 years. That's a new law that was set up last year. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on. So, you know, if you give this to a son or daughter, they're going to be forced to take out that money over 10 years. And, you know, they are probably young and they're not going to want that tax burden at that point. So often when I'm talking to people with children, I say, well, leave something like a house to your children. They'll get the step up in basis, which means they won't have to pay capital gains tax. But the retirement account is a really good asset to give to charity. Now, the life insurance policy, this is another thing. A lot of people end up with a life insurance policy that they no longer need. So there's a couple different ways that they can give that. They can give it while they're living to a nonprofit, or they can name the nonprofit as a beneficiary of the policy, or they can also name the nonprofit as the owner of the policy, which is a little bit more complicated. And I won't go into that too more, but there's a lot of options there for life insurance policies that are not needed anymore. And then finally, the other financial accounts are like transfer on death accounts. This is your checking account. This is your savings account. You may have other investment accounts that are set up this way. We also have had people give us annuities, brokerage accounts, things like that. So there's the good thing about this is often these beneficiary designation forms are online. So, you know, if you're working with, say, Charles Schwab or Fidelity, you go online, log into your account. You can do this for free and change those beneficiaries as often as you want. So with a bequest, you have to go back to a lawyer and have them update that. And that works great for some people, but some people just say, oh, I don't want to go back and touch my will. I think I'm just going to update one of these beneficiary designation forms and make this nonprofit a 50% beneficiary of my retirement account, or, you know, break it out and say I'm going to support 4 charities with my retirement account. So this is a really great option. So the next thing you would want to do is talk to your, I should say, account rep or policy custodian, or go online to update your beneficiary forms. And the one thing I will briefly say is typically these forms give you very little room to put down. You know, you'll be able to put down University of New Mexico Foundation for Popejoy Hall, but that's when we kind of go back to you and ask you, can you give us a little bit more detail, you know, because we want to know what you want to support, say at Popejoy, you know, is it unrestricted or is it something more specific? Now, the IRA charitable rollover, like I said, also known as the qualified charitable distribution, is something you can do once you reach age 70 and a half or older. So the great thing about this is you have to take a required minimum distribution now starting at age 72. It was changed from 70 and a half to 72 last year. So what you can do is basically say, well, I have my required minimum distribution, but I don't need it all. What I'd like to do is to donate some of this to charity. So you can directly roll it over to the charity, meaning that you as the donor never touch that money. It comes directly from your IRA custodian directly to the charity. So that is not added to your taxable income. You don't get a charitable deduction, but that is because you're already excluding it from your taxable income. So a lot of people are using this. I know when I started at the foundation, we had about 350,000 in 1 year that people were giving cumulatively from IRAs, and now we're well over 1 million. So this is becoming a very popular thing as people are seeing the large size of their retirement accounts and saying, well, I don't want to give away any other cash or any other thing, but I can do this because I have to take out this money, basically. So this is a wonderful way to do this. And if you want more information about this, you can talk to someone in my office, and then you talk to your IRA custodian about how they would transfer the money over. So I've mentioned a couple things that changed last year because, as we know, COVID-19 affected every aspect of our lives. So some legislation was put through the CARES and SECURE Acts. So last year, required minimum distributions from retirement plans were completely waived. We haven't heard about them doing that in 2021, but TBD, it's still early in the year. So they raised the age at which a person must start taking required minimum distributions from a retirement plan from age 70 and a half to 72. So they're giving you a little bit more time to bulk up those retirement plans. Because also the third point here, they're allowing contributions to your regular IRA after age 70 and a half, which you weren't previously allowed to do. And then this final point, it said requires retirement funds given to non-spousal beneficiaries. They have to be fully distributed within 10 years. And that's why I had mentioned that as being such a good option to give to charity. So that you're not putting an undue financial burden on somebody who's much younger. So getting close to the end here, I just want to talk about talking to the nonprofit if you choose to make them a beneficiary of your estate plan and why that's so important. So this is a very simple thing, but did you name the nonprofit correctly on your will, trust, or beneficiary designation form? If you're wanting to give to, say, a Popejoy, you wouldn't put down Popejoy, you would put down the University of New Mexico Foundation for Popejoy, because we're the ones that take in that gift. So it just, it could create some legal issues at the very end when your family and trustee and everybody at least wants it. So it's always good to say, what's your full complete name that I should use in your tax ID number, things like that. Second, can the nonprofit use the gift in the way you have outlined? Now, this is not such a case at Popejoy, but working for UNM, we get all kinds of requests, such as, I would like to set up a scholarship for female students in STEM. Well, we're a state school. We can't give scholarships based on gender. So, with Popejoy, you would just want to make sure if, say, you want to start something new or a new fund or something like that, talk to them about it, because maybe they have something similar. It's very hard at the end when you're no longer here with us for us to kind of piece through, like, what did they want? What were they really trying to say when we can't ask you? So it's always better to have that conversation up front. And then think about this. Do you want your estate gift to be endowed? So an endowment means that the principal is never touched. The interest is just taken off annually from that principal and used to support whatever you designate it for. A lot of people like to do this because it's going to live on in perpetuity. They can name a fund after themselves or somebody they love. And it leaves a permanent legacy at the nonprofit that you're giving this money to. You can also just do unrestricted support or a spending account, which means they can spend down whatever you give as soon as possible. But I find that the endowment is a really popular option for legacy gifts. And finally, another reason why you might want to let those nonprofits know that you're in your plan is most of them have legacy societies. The Popejoy Hall has the 1966 Heritage Society. You can see Maryellen here on your far right and some of our great members. And, they get special access to things. get treated well in the lounge. And so, you know, it's just nice to let people know, because then you might get some benefit for yourself back, and you might get to do some fun things with the nonprofit that, you know, if they didn't know you were making a bequest to them, that they might not know to invite you to. So just something to think about. I know not everybody likes that kind of attention sometimes, but just something to think about. So just to wrap up my presentation, I want to just give a big thank you to Lisa from Morris Hall, because they have made a very generous offer. They're going to make a donation to Popejoy for the estate plans they are retained to prepare from that come out of today's webinar. So you just have to make an appointment within 6 months of the presentation, and they will give 10% of whatever you've paid to have your estate plan due back to Popejoy. So that is a really cool thing. So that's one option. And at the UNM Foundation, we also have a list of other attorneys in the area in case you want a range of options to choose from. So I just want to say a real big thank you to everybody.
I wanted to thank our 3 dynamic panelists for their thoughtful presentations today, and thank all of you for attending our first estate planning webinar. No one touches lives in the community like Popejoy Hall, and I want you to know that you're all valued stakeholders in our future. And remember, Popejoy Hall is UNM founded, but community funded. Thank you so much, and enjoy your day.